Welcome everyone to episode 2 of the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint Virtual Ninja Training. My name is Heike and I will be your host for this episode again. A couple of reminders. There is a chat function, so if you want to ask a question, please feel free to do so, and we will answer in the background whilst we are doing that show. Today, it's all about getting you started with a fresh Microsoft Defender for Endpoint tenant with all the settings that you need to do in order to get your data in the tenant. I'm joined today by Dean. And Dean, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Dean Pickering. I'm a product manager in the M365 Defender CAT team, specializing in Defender for Endpoint.
Thank you. Another reminder, and there will be a link here, which is aka.ms/MDE trial if you do not yet have a trial, because we are also going to show you the built-in evaluation lab, and you can test it together with us. So Dean, there is a few things that people need to do configuring their tenant before they actually can get started. What's the process? Tell me. People get a link and then what they do.
Correct. So there is a link there that will then take people to a wizard where they will be asked a few questions around where do they want their Defender for Endpoint tenant to be, which region, data retention, how long would they like to keep that data within the M365 tenant, and
what are the options there?
The options are up to 180 days. So that's brilliant for when cyber analysts are looking back, understanding what threats and incidents and attacks may have happened within their environment. They get up to 6-month view to look back at that data. And customers will also be asked for information on their industry, and also if they would like to sign up initially for preview features straight away within the tenant.
So this means public preview features as soon as when we release new features, they always go through rings. So this would be public preview, and it's the one step before we actually call it general available. And it's a great opportunity for everyone to see what's coming and help us get that over the finish line by maybe reporting some glitches or here or there. So that I always recommend people to please sign up for the public preview features. Okay, so once that's done, they will see their control center, which is the Microsoft 365 Defender portal. It's probably pretty empty. I know that you don't want to show us something empty, right? So do you want to show us something that looks pretty, and after people actually have some data in there, how that looks like?
Sure. So as soon as people sign up for Defender, they will go to security.microsoft.com, which is the URL for Microsoft 365 Defender, which is where Defender for Endpoint lives. And the first home screen that people will be taken to is the best place to look holistically across the environment to understand things like their secure score, so their security posture, any information on whether devices are compliant, not compliant, understand how to enroll devices, which I'll talk about in a minute, and get a very good view of seeing device health, any users that are at risk, any open alerts and incidents that might need investigation. You can click straight from the home screen straight into those incidents and alerts and start investigating.
Awesome. So this is basically your dashboard to get a quick overview, as you said, across your environment. Correct. Of all the things that are set up. So good. You just mentioned you're going to show us next how you actually get your machines onboarded to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. What does it mean? Is basically turning on the features on the devices to start sending cyber telemetry to that dedicated tenant of the customer, and then light up and show up in the portal, right?
Correct, exactly. So the first thing to do is, as I mentioned, security.microsoft.com. Once you're here, you would go into the very bottom left of the main menu bar into settings. And here you can see different settings options for the different Microsoft Defender products that we have. Of interest today is endpoints. So within endpoint settings, you will then see all of the different settings that are related to Microsoft 365 Defender. As mentioned, the region that was selected, the retention that was selected during standing up the tenant initially, that first setup wizard, and at the very bottom of this endpoint settings menu is device management and onboarding.
Yeah, we can onboard multiple devices or different devices. So I guess you will walk us through the different device types.
Correct. So we have different device options for MDE. So anything from Windows 7 all the way to Windows 10, Windows 11. For servers, different Windows server versions, Mac, Linux, iOS, Android. Once you click on the specific device type you want to onboard, so let's say Windows 10, Windows 11, in this case, you will then be given different options of how to onboard that machine, be that a local script, group policy, endpoint manager, Intune, depending on how you manage your devices within your environment.
So that basically gives you now a script to download that does the magic on the endpoint.
Exactly. Yeah.
I just want to mention here something super important is if you have a device that's onboarded, but for whatever reason you don't want to have that device reporting back into the tenant anymore, you also need to get that offboarding script, right? So it's not so easy to tamper with clients and then just pretend they're not there anymore. You really have to get that onboarding script. Tell us a little bit about that, Dean, please.
That's right. So exactly as you said, Heike, to offboard a machine from MDE, it's not something that can just be done on the device. Someone would need to go into your tenant. This is all specific on a tenant per tenant basis for each of our customers. Go into the offboarding section and download a unique offboarding package. That offboarding package will work for your tenant alone, and will only last for 30 days and will expire after 30 days.
So an additional security layer added on that here. Cool. So now imagine, I guess that's simple. You download the script, you go to your management tool that you use, you start onboarding the clients. You probably also go there and configure the security baseline, but we will have a separate session on management. So this goes a little bit too deep for that getting started talk. So what are the other settings or configuration options that someone should do next? Basically allowing people to access, like security analysts, the SOC team, to basically access and give them control over only the data they should have access.
Correct. Perfect question. So as you said, once the scripts have been downloaded, they've been handed off to your local IT teams, they're working on onboarding your devices. The next best thing to do is start looking at roles and permissions within Defender for Endpoint. Access is split in Defender for Endpoint into two areas. There are roles, which defines what someone can do, and then there are device groups, which defines what devices someone has access to and what they can see within the tenant.
And then you basically connect these. You say there is a role ABC, and role ABC has these different permissions over, and then you get the group, or how does it really show us?
Exactly. So to dive into it, so here we have two examples. We have MDE readers, Mde Responders, two very common roles that we would have within the organizations that we work with every day. So readers, I have given them a set permission where they can read security operation data. So incidents, alerts, investigation information, and also then threat vulnerability management. So the TVM section of MDE. As you can see though, they can't do anything else. They can view the data and that is it. So what then defines who has this access is based on the assigned user groups. So as you can see here, we've set up a mock tenant, very similar to what we see with our customers. We have region-based groups, so HQ readers, Netherlands readers, UK readers, who we'll see in a second will be given access to just their device group. And then SOC readers who, same idea, the SOC members will be placed in this group, but they will have access to every device group as they need to see every device within the organization. Similarly, we also have Mde Responders, which behaves in the exact same way. We have just given the responders more access and more permissions within Defender for Endpoint. So as well as being able to see the data, they can also respond to threats, manage vulnerability scores, use our live response feature, which is how they may gain access to a device during an outage and an incident. And again, we have simply added the responder groups within Azure AD into this role.
Okay, so basically with the role, you define the permissions and the things that someone can do and give this set of permissions to a group of people.
Correct, exactly. And
how do you get that group of people together?
And then how we define the groups of then how those people work and what they can see is based on the device groups. So device groups are very much buckets of devices that we can then control who has access to the devices within those buckets, within those groups. So to continue and play the example through, here we have HQ workstations, and we have set the criteria to be machines that have the tag that equals HQ. And as it's a workstation group, the OS is Windows 10, Windows 11. To very quickly touch on tags, a tag can be added to a machine multiple ways. It can be added either manually by going into the device inventory, into the device and manually adding the tags. However, for large organizations, that's not very optimal. It can also be done through our APIs en masse, but what we see most frequently is adding a tag on the device itself. So the tag can either be assigned by registry for Windows or via the config file for Mac Linux. And what we have done is married the user groups that we set up in the role section. So readers, responders for the HQ. So only the HQ staff will see these machines along with the SOC, who again will hypothetically in this environment have access to every group.
So how do you get people in that group? I'm still waiting for John and Heike to show up in a group.
So those groups are created and administered within Azure AD. Sorry.
Okay. There we go. Okay, that was just a little piece that I was missing. Cool. So what are the common scenarios that people would split and divide? You were saying you had like headquarter and the Netherlands and then the UK. That is like a bigger organization that has individual SOC teams per area, right?
Exactly. Well, something that we come across quite often is there'll be a global SOC team who would have access to everything. And then regional teams, be that security administrators, be that just local IT, who are quite often the first responders in an attack. For example, the local IT in the UK only need to see the UK workstations, the UK machines. Vice versa, the Netherlands team only need to see the workstations or servers for the Netherlands. So if we look at the UK workstations device group, we can see again, workstations, Windows 11, Windows 10, and then this time the tag equals UK, not HQ, and the user access is again the SOC, as they have access to everything, but then just the UK group this time. So for example, anyone in the HQ group wouldn't see any UK machines.
I guess another example would be tier-based SOCs, right? Where you say, okay, certain analysts, they can maybe see everything because they're not divided in, they don't have local security teams, but there is a tier one that can maybe read everything and then tier 1 can do basic remediation actions, and then tier 3 can do, right? There's another
Exactly, yeah, exactly that. And another example we've seen before is creating a device group based on name. So if a name starts with DC for domain controller, that might then put all the domain controllers within the environment. You might again want to tighten down the access for that, of only certain people can see and run response actions on domain controllers, given their importance. So you tie that to a group, and only specific people can do that. So it really gives that flexibility to control who can do what on a device and what devices can somebody see and not see.
Okay, Dean, can we go one step back, and can you show us how you actually create such a role from the very beginning?
Yes, absolutely. So if we go back into roles, we have readers.
And what do we want that role to be for? Like, is it a threat and vulnerability management person that will look into that kind of data, or do you have a different example for us?
TVM is perfect. So we already have SOC readers, SOC responders. Another very common ask is around TVM. So if we go in, create a new role, add an item, specify the name. Here, what we want to do is we don't want to give someone access to security operations. So we don't need them to see incidents, alerts, investigations, just threat vulnerability management. But as this is a threat vulnerability management manager, we want to give them the access to create exceptions within TVM, deal with remediation, create tickets, so on and so forth. So we'll create these 3 specific roles. So view data TVM, remediation TVM. If we now tie that to a group within Active Directory that we've previously created, so if we just do a search for the name for that, and the one we are looking for is not here.
Doesn't matter, but I guess you have to create that role before, as you said, and then you add it here.
Yeah.
So I think that shows us
exactly. Yeah.
how
so
it works.
Hypothetically, this was the TVM team. We would add this, select, save. Simple as that.
So now that we have talked about the permissions, the concept of role-based access control, the various scenarios our customers are using that, there is also, we talked about the machine groups, and I think something important for customers to turn on in their tenant is automated investigation and response, which can be configured in 2 modes. One is semi-automated and the other way is fully automated. Semi-automated would mean that the investigation will be performed, but there will be no remediation be done by the automation. It will basically provide the security analyst with a remediation package and wait for the approval to perform the remediation. The fully automated way is the one that we, of course, recommend for the majority of the devices. We don't want to wait for someone to click on something and approve it whilst there's a threat on the device that could be remediated automatically. So, Dean, show us how you can now configure automation, please, for specific groups.
Absolutely. So, Heike, as you mentioned, fully automated is the default. It's absolutely the setting we recommend. However, if there is a need to lower that protection and make it so that the automation will run but not automatically do the remediation, you will go into the relevant device group, let's say headquarters servers in this example, and within that first page where you set the name, you also get the remediation level option. So if we decided to make this semi-automatic for all folders, meaning an auto investigation will run and be performed, but it won't do any remediation action without that action first been approved. Select semi-automated, next, finish, and we can now see the remediation level is semi-automated for HQ servers.
Before we jump into the built-in evaluation lab, can we have a look at the, I think, is it settings or preferences, where you have a few more options to go through at the beginning, hopefully when you just start with your tenant.
That's right. Yeah. So within endpoint settings, again, we have an advanced features area. And this is where a number of the advanced settings are configured. You will see that certain things like automated investigation, as we just spoke about, is on by default. Other settings are not on by default, and they need to be configured within your environment. However, that's best works for yourselves. A good example of that would be live response. Again, it's a feature where your analysts can remotely access a machine, therefore very powerful. It's important to get the RBAC structure correct and make sure that only the right people can access it based on roles and device groups that we've already spoke about. But once you're ready, you would tick the slide box, save preferences. That would enable live response within the tenant level.
Awesome, thank you. What's else? What else is in there?
Good question. So there are other things around EDR block, which is another one of our features for if you're running a different antivirus on the machine. The EDR can clean up threats that were missed, for want of a better phrase, by the initial antivirus. That can be turned on tenant wide for every machine here, allowing.
It's basically our EDR detects something that might that your third-party AV might have missed, and we are then waking up our dormant AV to take the remediation action.
100%. Yeah, exactly that. And that can be turned on for every machine with one click of a button. Another point I wanted to mention on this page was automatically resolve alerts. This is now on by default for every new tenant. What it means is that if an alert is generated and a threat is removed, be that through Defender antivirus itself, be that through our auto investigation feature, if it's in fully automated, the alert will close itself off, automatically resolve, and there's no action needed there for a SOC analyst.
This is awesome. And I think this is so important, especially when customers use conditional access, which, again, I want to explain quickly, means there is a threat on a device, which means there's an alert. The device gets a severity or a risk, and you can configure devices with a high risk cannot access corporate data. So now automation kicks in, and if it would just resolve the threat, like remove the threat, but not resolve the alert, their device would still have a high risk and that chain would be broken. So this is a super important setting that is now finally on by default. Thank you very much, Dean. That's super important. So now let's go and have a look at our built-in evaluation lab. I'm excited because I think this was such a great feature that came out and is so powerful for people to discover and learn about Defender for Endpoint.
Yeah, so we leave settings alone for a minute. If we go back into the left main menu of M365D and we want to look for endpoints, which is the Defender for Endpoint section, and underneath evaluation and tutorials, we have the evaluation lab. So as Heike mentioned, it's a built-in lab where you can spin up machines and start to detonate attacks and start to test Defender for Endpoint.
And the endpoints are onboarded to the tenant, so you will see the data in your new tenant. But of course, the machines are not part of your network, which means, yes, let the attacks run there. And it's all like for the parts that are part of the evaluation lab, they're of course harmless. They don't do anything. But there might be someone out there that wants to use the evaluation lab to also do some testing, and you can use these machines.
Exactly. So if we very quickly step through the wizard, first question, how many machines do you want? As Heike mentioned, these machines are completely sandboxed, away from your corporate environment, completely safe to detonate real attacks in there if that's what you want to do. And it then depends how many machines do you need. Obviously, the fewer machines you need, the quicker we will renew, the quicker the machines, will be live. So 3 days for 3 devices, and then lower as you go down.
Yeah, basically, if you want to have got many machines. They have a shorter lifetime and will be deleted. Yeah, good. So you select something, and that's a one-time selection here.
Click next. On the next page, once we've selected how many machines we require, you agree to the licensing agreements and select which simulation agents you want. We have Attack IQ.
So there's two built-in attack simulation vendors. We have Attack IQ and
Also, we have Attack IQ and we also have Safe Breach.
Safe Breach. Awesome. And they provide different kind of attacks that can be simulated.
Correct, exactly that. So we then need to fill in information. And then from here, we click just a quick summary of what we've done. 3 devices. The devices will be deleted after 72 hours. We've decided to activate both vendors, so Attack IQ and Safe Breach, and we click Setup Lab, and those machines will start to be built.
Basically, the setting is built, or the settings, and now you start adding a device from the ones that you just selected, the 3, and maybe run an attack simulation, right? Let's do that.
So the first thing we do is add a device, Windows 10, and let's install Office, hypothetically. So we add a device. As you can see, there are other things that could be added: Java, Python, sysinternals. Click Add a Device. That will now start to spin up. It's important to note that this is the only place, the only time that you will get the password. So if we copy that to clipboard, we can see username administrator1. We'll need that in a second. If we click done.
Why do we need the password for? I understood that only if you really want to do an RDP session into the machine. Otherwise, what do you need the password for? Other examples?
So that is what I was getting at with that. If you want to actually access this machine, you can do that through RDP, and you can use the username and password that's displayed there to get onto that machine.
Perfect. Okay. But to just like keep doing my simulation here and these kind of things, all good.
Yeah, exactly. All good. So if you then wanted to create a simulation, we go in, create a simulation, choose the simulator. So both we have both of them in on this evaluation lab. We then get to choose what simulation we want. As you can see, we have things around credential theft, code execution, ransomware, SolariGate, different persistence methods, different APT29 techniques. So if we said credential theft, hypothetically, select that device.
Okay, cool. So the device is now being built, and before we add a simulation from AttackIQ or Safe Breach, let's wait until the device is created. But there's a little bit more, Dean, that's available in the evaluation lab. Can you walk us through the other nice features and options?
Of course. So as Heike mentioned, we can build devices. That's been done. We also have the simulations gallery, where we have information on the different simulations and attack tutorials that are available. And it's possible to, once the machines are built, you can actually RDP onto those machines, and from the simulations gallery, download a simulations file, and then actually run that file and run that attack on the machines that have been built as part of the evaluation lab.
That's awesome. This is simulation. And then those are not only Microsoft. I saw there is another part as well. Then there's also the tutorial, which was there from early days, where we provide really nice walkthrough documentation as well as files if needed and such to do another more, I wouldn't call it simple, because it shows you fileless attacks, or shows you how to kick off different other attacks. But there are not a full simulation of like multi-stage attacks like the simulations that we have with Attack IQ, if this is right.
Correct. Exactly. It's not as sophisticated as the simulations that are there within Attack IQ and Safe Breach. However, it does give a very good understanding of how alerts will be generated within Defender for Endpoint. For example, within the device inventory, to go there very quickly, we have one device that I stood up earlier on, and I ran one of the tutorials on this device, and we can see that there are a handful of alerts there that have been generated by the less sophisticated tutorial that, as Heike mentioned, has been around for a long time. If we went into one of these alerts to investigate it, we'll see I was logged in, the machine that we were logged into, and most importantly, we'll see the process tree, and on the lightning bolt, the action that Defender felt was suspicious. And we can see here a script was executed. We can see the content of that script, and that's a good hopefully a good image of understanding how once a machine has been onboarded, you can go into the tutorials and simulations section, run one of the simulations or the tutorials on a machine, and see alerts being generated within your environment that can then be investigated, managed, and closed.
So, and I guess another difference is for the simulation and tutorials that we just talked about, this is all the things where someone needs to do something, like going and RDPing into that machine. For the simulations that can be added in the evaluation lab to a machine, these are automated, and then you basically look at the results. Exactly. But you don't have to. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So there's the hands-on options, or there's the automated options where you can run the simulation exactly as it sounds. It will simulate those attacks, and then you'll be able to see and understand and investigate the alerts accordingly.
Okay, so it looks like it still takes a little bit to build that device, but that's not really doesn't really matter. I think you showed us you would click on create a simulation, you select the simulation, you pick the device, and then basically say, let's create it, right? So, and then you would wait again until the simulation was run, and then you go back to your incident queue or your alert queue.
Exactly.
To actually investigate those simulations.
Yep, exactly that.
Yep. So what else do we have on the suggestion screen there? So we talked about run. This is basically a little guide for you where you start. What's on that right side there? Yep. Suggestions.
Exactly. So as Heike mentioned, you run simulations and tutorials. You can then review the incidents, and you can then hunt for threats. So hunting is our advanced hunting feature, and it is part of M365 Defender all up. As you can see, there is a devices area. Hunting is something that I know will be spoke about in depth on one of the other shows by one of my colleagues, which will be great.
I think it's important that the evaluation lab will help someone to get started. Like, yep. If I'm not I don't know about threats, I can download my Ica virus. That's all I know. But that's probably not what we want to show the product for, that we are able to spot a test virus.
Yeah.
So it helps someone to really get started with the steps on the side, with machines, with simulations, and then go from there. And of course, we will talk about how to investigate, how to look at alerts, how to use incidents, and all these things in upcoming episodes. So I think, Dean, for getting started, that was great. So we talked about an overview of the dashboard, what's all in there. We talked about how a tenant is being set up, what are the first settings someone needs to decide. on, about permissions, how user groups are being created, how roles are being configured and then connected, as well as machine groups. And all of this then makes sense to structure organizations. And then we looked at some more advanced settings about automation and enabling live response. And all these settings are found under advanced settings. And then we had a look at the built-in evaluation lab. I think that's a great way to get someone started and now hands-on, right? And then all the other episodes will go into the deeper levels of other functionalities and features.
Great.
So Dee, thank you very much for being my expert on that episode. And I hope I will have you back as an expert in some upcoming shows. Again, thank you very much.
No, you're welcome. Thank you, Heike. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks everyone for joining us at this virtual Ninja Show around Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. The next episode number 3, is about threat and vulnerability management, coming up soon. So again, mark your calendars, go to the website aka.ms/ninja show so you can actually add the episodes to your calendar. You can also use the sign up for the entire series button. There's also share your voice. Please always provide us feedback, what you like. Also, if you have recommendations or suggestions of what other content you would like to hear from us. And with that, again, thank you very much and see you soon.